Good morning, children. So today I am present here with a new lesson, The Rat Trap by Selma Lagerlof. So first, let's talk about the author. Selma Lagerlof is a Swedish writer and teacher. Her first novel is Gustav Berling's Saga. She is the first woman and first Swedish author to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. Now, introduction of the story. The story is set in the middle of the mines of Sweden, which are full of iron ore. This story is about a peddler who is a disheartened fellow, disappointed fellow, hopeless fellow, who has pessimistic attitude towards life and world. To him, the world is nothing but a rat trap. As the rat trap traps the rat, in the same way, the world full of luxuries and delicacies traps the people. But at last, this pessimistic attitude is changed by the generosity, kindness of a young girl. Now the characters of this story. First, the peddler, who is always seen with rat traps. Then an old man, who is a crofter. Crofter means farmer of a small farm. Then the head smith. Head smith means the head of the blacksmiths. Then some blacksmiths who used to work in the iron mill. Then the owner of the iron mill. And at last, Edla will mention who is the daughter of the owner of the iron mill. So now let's start the lesson. Just see. Once upon a time, there was a man who went around selling small rat traps of wire. He made them himself at odd moments from the material he got by begging in the stores or at the big farms. So the story starts just like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, means long before, long ago, there used to live a peddler, Miss Hawker, who sells his things, wandering here and there. So he used to sell rat traps. And the rat traps were made by him only. He himself used to make rat traps. In his old times, in his difficult times, in his critical times. And the material he used in making this rat trap, he used to beg either from farms or from stores. But even so, the business was not especially profitable, so he had to resort to both begging and petty thievery to keep body and soul together. But his business, his work, his profession of selling rat traps was not profitable. He couldn't earn much. So side by side. He used to do theory also. Means sometimes he used to steal, but small things only, inexpensive things, cheap things, and he used to beg us. Children, here there is a word resort. Resort means also a place where we visit to enjoy our holiday. And when resort is work, then resort means to move, to travel. But here, resort means to adopt. So, besides selling his rat traps, sometimes he used to beg and steal also. Why? Because the profit which he got from selling was not enough. So, to keep his body and soul together means to keep his body and soul together means to survive. He was compelled, he was bound, sometimes to steal and sometimes to beg. Even so, his clothes were in rags, his cheeks were sunken, and hunger gleamed in his eyes. But his theory, his begging, was also not sufficient for his survival. In spite of his begging and theory, his clothes were torn and his cheeks were sunken. Children, sing, sang, sung. Sang is the past form of sing, and sunken is the past participle of sing. Sing, sang, sung. Sang, past form. Sung, past participle. Then what is sunken? Sunken is not used nowadays as the verb form. It is only used as an adjective, like sunken cheeks, sunken garden. Means sunken cheeks means bony cheeks, cheeks without much flesh, cheeks under eyes. So the beggar had sunken cheeks and hunger gleamed through his eyes. Means anybody could read his face that he was very hungry. Although, besides his selling, he used to do thievery and begging also sometimes. But still, his condition was not good. So, in the first paragraph, we have read about the peddler, his physical condition. Now, let's see. No one can imagine how sad and monotonous life can appear to such a vagabond who plods along the road, left to his own meditations. The peddler was vagabond who doesn't have any permanent establishment, who wanders here and there in search of food. Nobody can imagine how sad the life of vagabond would be, how boring his life would be. He used to be always lost in his own thought, wandering here and there. Plod. Plod means to walk heavily, slowly, as if tired. So he used to walk on the road heavily, slowly, lost in his own meditation, own thought. Means his life was full of sorrow. But one day this man had fallen into a line of thought which really seemed to him entertaining. But one day, one idea struck him. One thought came to his mind, and this thought was entertaining to him. This thought was pleasing to him. He liked the thought. He had naturally been thinking of his rat traps when suddenly he was struck by the idea that the whole world about him, the whole world with its lands and seas, its cities and villages was nothing but a big rat trap. What was that idea which struck him? The idea was that the whole world was a rat trap. He thought that the whole world was nothing but only a rat trap. The world full of different kinds of things like land, seas, vegetation has only and only purpose. And this is the purpose to work like a rat trap. This idea came to him. It had never existed for any other purpose than to set baits for people. It offered riches and jewels, shelter and food, heat and clothing, exactly as the rat trap offered cheese and pork, and as soon as anyone let himself be tempted to touch the bait, it closed in on him, and then everything came to an end. He thought that as the rat trap has a piece of cheese, sometimes a piece of chapati, sometimes a piece of any kind of food, only to lure, only to tempt, only to entice the rats. Bait means the thing which we use to attract, to tempt, to entice a fish, a rat is called bait. So as in a rat trap, we keep these kinds of food to tempt the rat. Similarly, the world full of delicacy, luxuries, different kinds of shelter, different kinds of food, different kinds of clothes, tempt the people, entice the people. And the people who are tempted, they fall into that trap, fall into that snare, fall into the trap of the world. What does it mean? People fall into the trap? Means the people who are tempted by the temptation of the world, by these luxuries and comforts and different kinds of gorgeous things of the world, uh, they fall into certain bad habits. They start committing offenses, crimes, and this way they are trapped in this world. So, according to him, the world is just like a rat trap. Here, the author has used the figure of speech metaphor because there is comparison between the world and rat trap. But the words like and as have not been used. The world had, of course, never been very kind to him, so it gave him unwanted joy to think ill of it in this way. Unwanted. W-O-N-T, want. Want means habit, and it is now verb, then to make habit. Then wanted, habitual, usual, unwanted, unusual. The world, the life, had not given him any enjoyable thing, any comfortable thing. So he had ill thought about the world. He had pessimistic thought about the world. He had pessimistic attitude towards the life. Why? Because he had not got any such thing from the world which could make him happy, which could make his life comfortable. So only he thought negatively about the world. And this thought gave him pleasure. But this is unusual pleasure. Why unusual pleasure? When we get pleasure from good things, then this is usual pleasure. But when we get pleasure by killing someone, by stealing something, by doing bad something, and we get pleasure, then this is unusual pleasure. So he got pleasure by thinking ill of the world, but it gave him pleasure. So this was unwanted pleasure, unusual pleasure. It became a cherished pastime of his, pastime, recreation, entertainment. So thinking about the world negatively was a source of joy for him, was a source of pastime for him, entertainment for him, cherished entertainment. This was cherished, highly valuable entertainment for him. During many dreary ploddings, to think of people he knew who had let themselves be caught in the dangerous snare, and of others who were still circling around the bed. So while he is plodding, while he is wandering, while he is walking slowly and heavily on the road, he used to think generally about those people who are already trapped in this dangerous snare, of the world. Means who had become criminal, who had become robber, who had become murderer. Generally, he used to think about those people. And sometimes about those people also who are not trapped in the world, but who are about to be trapped. And why did he think all these things? Because by this thought, he got a kind of pleasure. Such kind of thought gave him pleasure. One dark evening, as he was trudging along the road, he caught sight of a little grey cottage by the roadside. One dark evening, in the same way as usual. One dark evening, he was walking on the road, he was plodding on the road, trudge, T-R-U-D-G, trudge means plod, and plod means to walk heavily and slowly. When he was walking slowly on the road, he caught sight of a little grey cottage. To catch sight of means to see something or someone for a moment only. So, for a moment, he saw a grey cottage. Children, G-R-A-Y grey and G-R-E-Y grey. The both words have same meaning. G-R-E-Y grey, name of the color. G-R-A-Y grey, name of the color. G-R-A-Y grey is most common in the USA, and G-R-E-Y grey is the most common in other English speaking areas. But the meaning of both is same. So what did he see? One evening when he was walking on the road, suddenly for a moment he saw a grey cottage. And he knocked on the door to ask shelter for the night. Nor was he refused. Instead of the sharp faces which ordinarily met him, the owner, who was an old man without wife or child, was happy to get someone to talk to in his loneliness. Then he went there and knocked on the door. Generally, what happened? Generally, whenever he knocked on the door, the people ignored him, rejected him, made faces to see him, became angry. But this time, the person who came out was an old man. He greeted him. He welcomed him. He took him to his house. Why? Because the old man was alone. He had no children, no wife. So he was happy to see him. He wanted to talk to him to remove his loneliness. Immediately he put the porridge pot on the fire and gave him supper. Then he carved off such a big slice from his tobacco roll that it was enough both for the stranger's pipe and his own. Not only he gave him shelter, but he prepared this for him, porridge, a kind of dish. And after serving the dish, after the dinner, the supper, he cut a big piece of tobacco, which was sufficient for his own pipe and for his guest pipe or the peddler's pipe. Finally, he got out an old pack of cards and played majolish with his guest until bedtime. And when smoking was also over, then he took out old packet of cards and he played with his guest with the peddler majolish. What is this majolish? A kind of card game which is played in Sweden. So children, that's all for today.